All right. Good Tuesday morning, May 13th. I'm Troy Black, and this is Filibustered Headlines daily live stream. So we go live 9:30 Central US AM, whatever, however you say those things. You can just pretend like I'm Google search and asking what the time zone difference is this morning because I'm just as reliable as Google search is. So today we're going to be talking about the stock market. I'm going to be your stock market guru today. Please don't take anything I say as financial advice unless it works out for you. Then you can give me credit. Also, we're going to be talking about a few other things. The P. Diddy trial coming to jury yesterday. We're going to be talking about Trump issuing an executive order to cut drug prices and what we're going to see in that area. Also, the Antarctic ice shelf sees record growth. What on earth is going on? And then a few other developing news stories as well. So let's get into the stock market. As you can see over here on my left or right or whichever direction you're looking from, we've seen some really cool growth over the last few weeks. So this is the S&P 500, just one day today. And obviously, I'm taking a little bit of a gamble because this little line could have been going red and down at the start of this broadcast because the market's only been open for about an hour. But then the 5-day, you can definitely see the growth here. Monday morning, that jump, and then this large growth factor here. And then also over a month as well, you see a lot of growth. I think it's about 600 or so points from April 21st to May 13th. So why is this happening? What are we seeing the results of right now? Obviously, we saw a stock drop when Trump originally announced his tariff program, his tariff initiative, and a lot of economists said some really nasty things. So let's see what the economists have to say now. We're going to look at the economists on the Fox Business side versus the CNN side and look at the comparison. So this was CNBC this morning. S&P 500 is little change as stocks look to extend Monday's big rally. The three reasons for this rally over the last few weeks, and especially this Monday, yesterday, that I've seen just in looking across the news, the different things that people are saying is number one, essentially there is the good news coming from Trump's tariff updates. So we've got a triple threat happening right now. So there's the good news coming from the tariffs that Trump is actually making trade deals with the UK. There's talks with China that a deal is being made, things like that. Also, other nations have been coming to the table and wanting to make a trade deal. Then also, we've seen a softer than expected inflation report. So inflation, instead of going crazy like it was under the Biden administration, is actually starting to decline. It's actually starting to slow down. And then also the third reason is that we've got this coming tax cut bill that the House and the Senate are trying to push through right now. We're trying to see, we're going to see the results of that and see how that also affects not just the stock market, but the economy in general once that gets passed and once we start to see that take force. So here are the economists' reactions by platform. So this is Fox Business. This just came out just this yesterday. Them reacting to the different stock market jumps that we've seen over the last 24 hours in the last couple of weeks. And right here, it says Trump calls tariff policy a financial revolution. So this is, they did an interview with former Trump economic advisor, Stephen Moore, and he admits that, yes, it could be the start of a financial revolution. What's interesting about this economic advisor that they got is that he is actually opposed to tariffs. So he did not like Trump's tariff idea. He spoke negatively against it publicly. And yet what we're seeing, this is crazy. He said, I'm not a big tariffs guy, but it looks right now like he, talking about Trump, is succeeding. Then he said this, he said, very rarely do I admit that I was wrong, but maybe I was wrong about this strategy. Man, we could use some more of that in the world today. People admitting that they were wrong when they were wrong. So I'm not saying that everything's going to go Trump's way. I'm not saying that, people like to use the term the golden age. And yes, obviously we've seen some of things in the economy react positively to his tariff program, to some of the ideas that they've had financially. And in a lot of ways, it does look that way. But I'm not necessarily going to say that everything Trump touches turns to gold, because if you're familiar with that old fable, we all know how that turns out. So we've got to be careful in the language we use. We almost put it's the start of the golden age on this, on the thumbnail, on the title, but I'm not there yet. So we'll see. But in a couple weeks, couple months, couple years, we might be seeing that. So this is what he said, this economist. He said 3 weeks ago, I was ready to jump. I was on a ledge ready to jump off. Obviously, he hopefully is kidding. And then he said, and now look at these numbers. So he's talking about a complete turnaround. And he talks about how the market is reacting somewhat to the idea of the coming tax cuts as well. And how we're already seeing positive numbers based on that, because who doesn't like tax cuts? It's going to stimulate the economy. And we could get into that. We're not going to get into that today. But we recently did do a longer episode about the tax cuts. If y'all want to go watch that live stream, there's a whole hour-long episode where we break down what happens when you start cutting the taxes on not just the population in general, but also the corporations and the small businesses, and the boom that you can see. And we saw a couple different historical examples of how that would actually stimulate the economy. One, under Calvin Coolidge as president, he cut taxes 3 times and yet saw an increase in the government's revenue and an increase in an economic boom. And then also we saw it again later on under another president whose name has escaped me. So the other hosts are watching me right now and saying, why do we have this guy on right now? So this is Fox Business. It'll come back to me later. This is CNN. Okay. So same news, stock surge, different economic perspective. Here we go. Their headline is, it's not a win. Economist reacts to trade truce with China. But then also they have the headline, stocks soar after U.S. China announced tariff truce. So they're kind of sending mixed signals here. This is weird, very weird. This is economist Justin Wolfers. Obviously, he's an influencer of some sort based on his background. And then it says, he says the short-term reaction is this is very good news. So he's admitting it's good news, but then he says the bad news, and this is quote, he says, at the moment, the half-life of a tariff announcement from the White House is about 6 to 8 days. So I'm going to give him that, right? You see, but here's the bigger perspective if you zoom back. Anytime there's good news, economically speaking, you're going to see a stock surge, right? Anytime there's bad news, you're going to see a stock drop. And once people forget about the good news, it's going to either flatline, it's going to drop, or it's going to keep going up for some other reason, right? So he's basically just spouting common sense here, common knowledge. But here's where it gets really funny, okay? They've announced that China has made certain concessions. The host talks about, and he asked him this question. He's like, okay, so are you willing to admit that it's a win that China has agreed to these certain concessions, right? And he said, it's not a win. It's not a justification, talking about the whole tariff issue and the trade wars and all that kind of stuff. So here's why he says it's not a win. He wants more specifics agreed upon, and he wants it in writing. Okay, so that's coming. That's absolutely coming. We're going to see the specifics agreed upon. We're going to see it in writing. But here's the thing. I personally believe he's looking for any reason he could push back against this being good news. Now, here's this happens on both sides. Okay. When Biden was in office, if something good happened, the conservatives, the Republicans, and I'm not here to bash conservatives or Republicans, because I know most people watching are very conservative, right? So I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, hey, let's not be hypocritical on either side. Okay. When good news happened, they were very quick to say this is not good news, right? And we all need to take a step back and say, hey, is this actually good news, and look at it objectively? And if we're willing to do that, then we're also going to be willing to admit, even if somebody didn't like Trump, they'd be willing to admit, if they were looking at it objectively, like, hey, this is good news. We're seeing a good turnaround here. We're seeing good news, and we're actually seeing some results take place. And I think that's what he's not willing to admit. And here's the clincher. So the host asked him, if we become less reliant upon China as a result of this, do you see that as a win? Okay, if we as the United States become less reliant upon China, here's his response. He said, let's not tie ourselves up in knots trying to make sense of something that we can't make sense of. So here's what I did. I went over to this. And I don't know if it's going to show up here. But no, I can't find the comments here at the moment. But I dropped a comment on this video, and I said, hey, Mr. Economist, if you want to make sense of what's going on right now, and I put a link to this video. I said, just go watch what Fox Business has to say about it. They explain everything, and then you can come back on CNN, and then you'll know what's going on, and you can make sense of it. So y'all can go thumbs up that comment. If they don't delete it over on that video for me, that would be awesome. Moving on to other topics. Here we go. So May 12th, 2025, this is yesterday, day one of testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. So the P. Diddy trial commenced with a finalized jury yesterday, and witnesses have taken the stand, and there's a lot of graphic allegations and incriminating evidence against this disgraced rapper, Sean P. Diddy Combs, and the details are very disturbing, so I'm not going to get into that. You can research it on your own, but I would say be very careful researching this topic. But here's what I would have to say about it from my perspective is God has a lot of grace for human beings because human beings make mistakes. Human beings are not perfect people. But at the same time, justice needs to be served, especially in cases like this when, the innocent are being taken advantage of, when atrocious things are being done against the innocent people and young people. And I'm just thanking God that justice is being served in this case right now. And I'm praying that justice continues to be served. So here we go. And that the right result comes of this case. But also in the news, Trump signs executive order that aims to slash drug prices by at least 50%. So we saw Trump, RFK Jr., and some other people come on to this live stream yesterday, and they announced this executive order to cut drug prices. So Trump says almost immediately they'll be cut by 30 to 80%. That's his hope. That's what he's saying is possible here. And essentially, this executive order pushes the big pharmaceutical drug companies to give the U.S. the same prices that they're giving to other nations. Right now, the U.S. Is essentially being taken advantage of, and we're being charged in a lot of cases. We're being charged. Let me see if I can find the actual 2 to 3 times higher than other developed nations, and up to 10 times higher than some countries. So let that sink in for a minute. The same companies are charging the U.S. 2 to 3 times higher than other developed nations, and up to 10 times higher than some other countries that are out there. Now, I will say, hey, if a nation is struggling, if a people are struggling and they need medicine, it's okay to give them a price reduction, okay? And that would be the right thing to do in that case, because we need to take care of the marginalized. We need to take care of people that can't take care of themselves or that need help, right? So but that's not what we're talking about here. A price reduction in certain places is a great idea, but when nations are on par with each other and one nation is getting one price and another nation is getting a completely different price that's way inflated, there's a problem. And so these drug companies are taking advantage of the United States because they know they can get away with it. And Trump is essentially saying enough is enough. So this is what he said. Big Pharma will either abide by this principle voluntarily or will use the power of the federal government to ensure that we are paying the same price as other countries. So joining President Trump in this press conference on Monday was RFK Jr., Dr. Oz himself. Are we living in a soap opera right now? I don't know, but it feels like it. Dr. Marty Makary, who's the commissioner of the FDA, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He's the director of the National Institute of Health. He's got a very difficult name to pronounce. We had to look that up. I hope I didn't botch it. So each of these representatives was given the floor, and they each had something to say. And I believe RFK Jr. said one of the most interesting things, and he said this was the fulcrum of Bernie Sanders' runs for presidency. So Bernie Sanders, obviously known socialist, and so very, very popular for the wrong reasons in some cases. But he says that this is what he says about Bernie Sanders' platform that he ran on. Right, he was going to eliminate the discrepancy between Europe and the United States, but as it turns out, none of them were doing it, and it's one of those promises that politicians make to their constituents, knowing that they'll never do it. So this is interesting that Donald Trump, who ran as a conservative, ran as on the Republican ticket, is trying to lower drug prices for common, ordinary Americans. Every day, going to work 9 to 5, coming home, getting my paycheck on Friday, having to pay bills, having to deal with inflation, having to deal with grocery prices, having to deal with drug prices increasing. And he's trying to help the ordinary everyday American be able to pay those bills, right? And that's crazy because most people would say, no, that's not the goal of a president like this, right? But obviously we're seeing the opposite, and he's trying to get things done for people that really need it. So it's unclear what type of force. So obviously you can go read about why American drug prices are so high. It's a little strange. There's not really a really good answer to that question, but it's not clear what kind of force that they're actually going to use to actually to implement this executive order. But one of the ideas is that potentially it has to do with the stock market, potentially has to do with something in that arena, but also because, and here's one of the reasons why we've seen the pharmaceutical drug company stocks drop since this announcement was made, but also it could just be that could just be a result of the announcement itself. So we are going to see some pushback here. CNBC says Trump's plan to slash drug prices may struggle to get off the ground. So there are reasons why they might have a hard time actually enacting this in executive order and getting it to work. But hopefully it works, and praying for the best. So here's another news. Earlier we saw Fox Business versus CNN. Now we're seeing Sky News Australia versus ABC News. So this is a video where they bring in geologist Ian Plimer. Pronunciation is definitely my strong suit. And he actually bashes ABC for the first half of the video and says everybody should come subscribe to Sky News instead. And then they actually get to the topic of conversation. They ask him about the record growth in the Antarctic ice shelf. So this is something that is being reported on right now. We're seeing record growth in the Antarctic ice shelf, which is actually flying in the face of a lot of the science that's out there and a lot of what scientists are saying. So they're saying, hey, the Earth is heating up. There's no sign of stopping. The ice is not going to come back, right? It's going away forever. And that's just not the case. That's not what's happening. And the scientists are scratching their heads trying to explain why we're seeing this record growth, right? At least according to the reports that are out there. So here's geologist Ian Plimer's response. He says in Antarctica, you've got another perimeter, which journalists never mention, 150 geothermal centers and volcanoes underneath the ice sheet. So he goes on to explain, hey, they talk about when the temperature in above the ice shelf in the Earth or in the atmosphere raises or lowers a few degrees, but he's like, no one's talking about when it raises or lowers by hundreds of degrees below the surface, where there are volcanoes and there's geothermal, whatever you call them. Obviously, I don't actually know what I'm talking about. Geothermal centers. So you'd have to go watch the video or read this guy's stuff to understand what that is. Maybe read a kid's book about volcanoes is probably what I need to do. So this is what he says, though, because a lot of times they talk about, oh, the ice caps are melting, this and that, and it's just a shock factor. It's just like, hey, be afraid. Here's the reason why. And this is his response. He says, when you ignore the volcanic factor, you end up with shock horror. Nothing should shock you if you're aware of the literature. So I love that, because as a Christian, I would say, hey, more importantly than the literature about the ice shelf and global warming and all that kind of stuff, I'll say, here's my phrase. Nothing should shock you if you're aware of the literature, the Bible, which is God's word to us. So there's my Christian caveat for today. In other news, this is developing news. Republicans face a crucial stretch this week as they aim to deliver on Trump's agenda. So this is Trump's big, beautiful tax bill. They're trying to push it through. Obviously, we're seeing the stock market react to that slightly already. It's supposed to include tax cuts and federal government savings, but it's still held up by multiple issues. Yet they're saying the goal is to deliver it by the end of this month, which is what they've been saying since it was originally announced. We'll see if they can actually hit that deadline. In other news, last but not least, who is in Saudi Arabia with Trump? Donald Trump currently is in Saudi Arabia, and he is joined by, again, living in a People magazine world right now, living in a soap opera, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent, and special guests Elon Musk. Wow. BlackRock's Larry Fink and NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang, if you can say it that way. Wow. So Trump's got an entourage around him. I wonder what music they play when they're riding around together. In Trump's $400 million airplane, I don't know, if that's going to come through or not. We'll have to see. Obviously, yesterday we reported on that. My brother Reese Black read the news yesterday, and he reported on that. There's a little bit of ambiguity there as to what's actually going on. Trump has said one thing. The nation of Qatar has said another thing. We'll have to see what actually comes out there because it's being reported on from multiple angles, and people are saying different things about it. So Saudi Arabia is actually investing $600 billion into the United States, much of which will go towards AI data centers and energy infrastructure. So this is actually pretty cool that we're seeing this take place, because this is just more of the same thing. We've seen investments coming not just from other nations, but from large corporations around the world who are making decisions about where they're investing their billions of dollars right now, whether it's going to be in the United States infrastructure and government and economy and market, or whether it's going to be somewhere else. And since the tariff announcements have come out, we've seen one after another, the dominoes falling, and more investments are coming to the United States, and that creates jobs. It creates a booming economy. It helps the markets all around. There's a lot of eyes on where the investments are going in the world, and more people are going to jump aboard that train and be willing to follow suit and invest where the money is going, and to follow what's happening there, and to prioritize it. So there we go. That's the news read for today. We went a little longer than I was hoping to, a little longer than normal. Y'all let me know what you think about this. Y'all subscribe to this channel, Filibusted, if you haven't. On Thursdays, we do a longer live stream where we have a conversation, me and 3 other hosts, and we dive into one of the breaking news topics from that week, or that, one of the things that's going on right there. So y'all don't forget to come back for Thursday's live stream, but we also do a breaking news segment every morning at the moment. And if these continue to do well, we're gonna keep it up. We're gonna keep going, and delivering the news from a positive perspective, but also from a Christian perspective moving forward. So that's it. Y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you.